he went there also. NJ was, I mean, incredible. We share, city. He was the man that was.
At 57 years old, Sammy Sosa lives far from the noise that once followed him everywhere. In a quiet house in Miami, the final light of the day settles gently across walls that hold more memory than sound. On a television screen, old footage plays without commentary, towering swings, roaring crowds, the unmistakable crack of bat meeting ball. For a brief moment, time folds in on itself. This was the man who once turned baseball stadiums into celebrations and strangers into believers. The smile that once filled billboards now carries reflection instead of triumph. Fame, he learned, does not fade loudly. It disappears in silence. Yet even in this stillness, something remains. A quiet dignity. A man who has lived every chapter of his story, both praise and painful, now choosing peace over applause. A boy from San Pedro de Macorís. Long before America learned to chant his name, Sammy Sosa was simply a boy growing up in San Pedro de Macorís, a coastal town in the Dominican Republic where survival mattered more than ambition and dreams were considered luxuries. His family lived in a small, crowded home where electricity flickered and uncertainty was constant. When Sammy was only 6 years old, his father died suddenly, leaving his mother, Maria, to raise 7 children on her own. That loss reshaped everything. Childhood ended without ceremony. Sammy learned early that responsibility was not something you chose, but something life placed on your shoulders. He shined shoes, ran errands, carried loads for strangers, and learned how to stretch small meals into hope. Hunger was familiar, but so was resilience. In that world, baseball was not entertainment. It was a promise that effort could still mean something, even for a child born with almost nothing. The game, that answered. Hunger. Sammy's introduction to baseball was shaped by scarcity and imagination. His first bat was not purchased in a store, but fashioned from whatever wood could be found. His first ball was cloth wrapped tightly, thrown until it unraveled and then stitched back together. The field was an empty lot where dust rose with every step and the sea breeze carried laughter mixed with exhaustion. Children didn't play for trophies, they played for relief. Baseball became a language when words failed, a rhythm that gave structure to difficult days. Every swing felt like resistance against poverty, a declaration that life did not have to end where it began. His mother watched quietly from doorways, tired but proud, reminding him that fear should never swing harder than belief. Those words stayed with him long after the sunset on those dusty fields, long before stadium lights ever appeared. Leaving home before childhood ended. At 17, Sammy signed his first professional contract, modest in value but monumental in meaning. It was the first tangible proof that his effort could lead somewhere beyond San Pedro de Macorís. Leaving home was not triumphant. It was painful. The journey to America felt like stepping into another world, one where the language was unfamiliar, the weather was harsh, and the comfort of family was replaced by isolation. In training camps, Sammy stood out not just for his power, but for his vulnerability. Coaches saw raw talent but questioned discipline. Teammates laughed at his accent, his timing, his aggressive swings. But Sammy did not respond with anger or excuses. He responded with work. He stayed late, ran extra drills, and listened more than he spoke. For him, silence became armor and effort became his voice. The long road to being taken seriously. The early years of Sammy's professional career were marked by instability. He was traded, reassigned, and doubted repeatedly. Scouts labeled him inconsistent. Commentators called him reckless. Each season felt temporary, like borrowed time. In Chicago, winters were unforgiving, both physically and emotionally. Loneliness settled in easily. Sammy lived simply, focused obsessively on training, and held on to one belief, that if he worked hard enough, someone would eventually believe in him. Baseball never promised fairness, only opportunity, and Sammy understood that better than most. Failure was not an option because failure meant returning to the life he had already escaped through sheer determination. Chicago and the weight of hope. By the late 1990s, baseball in America was struggling. The strike had fractured trust, stadiums were quieter, and fans felt disconnected from the game they once loved. Then something unexpected happened. In Chicago, Sammy Sosa began hitting home runs with stunning frequency. It wasn't just the distance or power, it was the joy. Night after night, fans tuned in not just to watch baseball, but to feel something again. Sammy's smile was genuine. His rituals, kissing his fingers, pointing to the sky, running the bases with gratitude, felt deeply personal. He wasn't performing patriotism or spectacle. He was expressing belonging. In a city desperate for hope, his presence became a source of emotional renewal. The summer that changed everything. The summer of 1998 transcended sports. Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire chased a record that had stood for decades, but what unfolded was larger than numbers. Baseball reclaimed attention, warmth, and unity. In Chicago, flags waved, strangers hugged, and generations found common ground again. For one brief season, differences in language, skin color, and origin faded into shared joy. Sammy finished with 66 home runs and earned the National League MVP, but his true achievement was restoring belief. It wasn't just what he did on the field, it was how he made people feel. Seen, hopeful, connected. For millions, that summer became a reminder that something good could still bring people together. Fame's fragile foundation. Fame is never permanent, no matter how brightly it burns. Praise, when repeated often enough, transforms into expectation, and expectation leaves little room for humanity. As seasons passed, the same spotlight that once celebrated Sammy Sosa began to examine him more closely, less generously. Every slump became a headline rather than a phase. Every mistake carried suspicion rather than understanding. Years after his historic peak, a broken bat incident occurred and quickly took on a meaning far greater than the moment itself. Context vanished almost immediately. Complexity disappeared. The public no longer wanted explanation or patience. They wanted certainty, clean answers to messy questions. And certainty, once questioned, is rarely restored. The story hardened, not through evidence alone, but through repetition. What had once been joy slowly became doubt, and doubt left little space for empathy. When applause turns away, Sammy's relationship with Chicago did not end with celebration or closure. It ended quietly, almost unnoticed. There was no farewell tour, no final moment to acknowledge what had been shared. Teammates moved on as seasons do. Media attention shifted elsewhere. The city that once lifted him allowed him to leave without ceremony. For a man whose entire life had been shaped by the need to be seen, to matter, the silence was devastating. Fame did not argue or explain its departure. It simply walked away. Sammy was left with the echo of cheers that once filled stadiums, now replaced by absence. He learned how quickly admiration can dissolve when it is tied to performance alone. Love, in that world, is conditional. When the results fade, so does the warmth. Public judgment, without private understanding. In the years that followed, Sammy became more subject than story. His name appeared more often in hearings and headlines than in highlight reels. Speculation replaced celebration. He spoke carefully, often through translators, answering questions in rooms that felt colder than any winter he had endured on the field. The narrative solidified with startling speed. He was no longer remembered as a source of joy, but positioned as a warning. What hurt most was not the criticism itself. Criticism can be faced. What cut deeper was the erasure, the refusal to hold joy and controversy in the same memory. The public appetite for simple conclusions left no room for contradiction. History, when simplified for comfort, rarely honors the full truth of a life. The body remembers everything. Retirement did not bring relief. Sammy's body carried the cost of decades of repetition and strain. Chronic pain followed him into mornings and nights. Simple movements became reminders of the physical price he paid. The same body that once thrilled millions now demanded patience and care. Physical pain, however, was manageable. Emotional exhaustion lingered longer. The sense that everything he had given, every swing, every celebration, every season, had been reduced to debate rather than gratitude weighed heavily. The body remembers everything, not just injury, but effort. It remembers sacrifice long after applause fades, long after attention moves on. And in that quiet reckoning, Sammy learned that healing is not about forgetting the past, but about learning how to live with it. Living under a public mirror. Changes in Sammy's appearance later in life became another chapter he never asked to write, yet one the public seemed eager to interpret without understanding. Rather than curiosity or empathy, the response was often cruel, reduced to jokes and speculation that traveled faster than truth ever could. Online commentary turned personal choices and private health matters into entertainment, stripping away dignity in exchange for clicks and laughter. For a man who had spent his life in the public eye, This new form of attention felt more invasive than applause ever had. Sammy did what he had learned to do when noise became overwhelming. He stepped back. He chose privacy over explanation, silence over performance. He did not owe the world access to his body, his health, or his reasons. Still, the hurt lingered. It lingered in moments when his children stumbled across comments they were too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel. Laughter without understanding cuts deeply, and public mirrors rarely reflect humanity. They distort, exaggerate, and reduce people to surfaces, forgetting that every face carries a story the world has no right to demand. Forgotten in one country, remembered in another. In the Dominican Republic, Sammy Sosa never stopped being a source of pride. His story belonged to the people there, not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. Statues stood in his honor. Fields carried his name. Children still wore his jersey, mimicking his swing with the same hopeful exaggeration he once had as a boy. To them, he was proof that circumstances did not have to be destiny. His name carried weight not because of controversy, but because of possibility. Yet across the ocean, in the country where he reached his greatest heights, his presence slowly faded from official memory. Hall of Fame ballots came and went without progress. Tribute montages skipped past his moments as if omission could rewrite history. The joy he once brought was quietly edited out for the sake of comfort. Being forgotten while still alive proved more painful than criticism ever could. Criticism at least acknowledges existence. Erasure denies it. To be remembered at home and erased abroad created a quiet fracture, a reminder that belonging can be conditional and gratitude can be temporary when memory becomes inconvenient. Learning to let go of recognition. For years, Sammy carried the weight of waiting for understanding, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for institutions to reconsider the story they had settled on. But waiting is exhausting, especially when the silence stretches longer than hope can survive. Eventually, something inside him shifted. The chasing stopped. He no longer waited for phone calls that would never come or gestures that had already been decided against. He stopped measuring his worth by rooms he wasn't invited into. Instead, he turned inward, toward what remained firmly within reach: his family, his health, his values. Letting go was not surrender. It was survival. It was an act of self-preservation. Peace replaced longing, not all at once, but gradually, like a muscle learning to relax after years of tension. Recognition lost its grip, and with it, the quiet desperation to be seen by people who had already looked away. Becoming a father, before anything else today, Sammy's mornings look very different from the ones that once defined him. Instead of schedules built around stadium lights and travel itineraries, they begin with small, intentional moments. He teaches his son how to hold a bat, not with urgency, not with an instruction shaped by expectation, but with patience. When the boy misses, Sammy smiles, because missing is part of learning, and learning should never feel like failure. When difficult questions come, he listens more than he speaks. He understands now that presence teaches more than advice ever could. Baseball is no longer about legacy or redemption. It is about connection, about sharing joy without pressure, about allowing the game to be playful again, free from the weight it once carried. He wants his son to love baseball if he chooses it, and to walk away if he doesn't. The lesson is not how to succeed, it is how to enjoy the moment without fearing judgment. Giving back where it matters. Much of Sammy's energy now flows toward helping children who grow up in circumstances similar to his own. He funds baseball fields where empty lots once stood. He provides scholarships, equipment, and opportunities for kids who dream without resources. He understands deeply how a single opportunity can change a life, because one changed his. These acts are not announced with press releases or framed as redemption. They are quiet, deliberate, and personal. He gives because he remembers what it felt like to be hungry, uncertain, and hopeful all at once. He remembers the importance of being seen by someone who believes in you before the world ever does. His philanthropy is not about repairing an image, it is about honoring a beginning. He gives not to be remembered, but because he remembers. Redefining what legacy means. Sammy Sosa may never receive the institutional recognition some believe he deserves. He may never walk into Cooperstown to applause or see his career distilled into an approved narrative. But legacy is not built solely by plaques, votes, or museum walls. It is built by impact, by the joy he once created for millions who needed it, by the lives he now supports quietly, without expectation, by the honesty with which he lives today, even when misunderstanding follows him. Legacy lives in people, not institutions. It lives in children who swing a bat because they saw someone like them do it first. It lives in moments that cannot be erased simply because they complicate comfort. His legacy exists whether it is officially acknowledged or not, because it continues to move forward through others. A different kind of peace. In the evenings, Sammy sometimes stands on his balcony, watching the sun sink slowly into the ocean. The colors change gradually, reminding him that endings do not always need to be abrupt or loud. The pain in his body remains, a reminder of the physical cost of decades spent chasing perfection. The memories remain too, some joyful, some heavy, but bitterness does not. He has learned to sit with complexity without fighting it. He accepts that some chapters are misunderstood and some endings are quiet. Not every story resolves the way it should. Not every contribution receives closure. He no longer needs to prove who he was to people who have already decided what they want to believe. He knows. And that knowledge has brought him a peace louder than applause ever was. Remembering without erasing. Sammy Sosa's story was never simple. It carries brilliance and mistakes, joy and loss, celebration and silence. It holds contradictions that resist easy framing. But it deserves to be remembered whole, not selectively, not comfortably, and not erased. History should be large enough to hold complexity without fear, because for one unforgettable summer, and for many seasons beyond it, he gave a nation something it desperately needed: belief. Belief in joy, in possibility, and in the power of sport to bring people together when little else could. Remembering him honestly means holding both the light and the shadow, without pretending one cancels out the other. Final reflection. Heroes are not perfect, they are human, and sometimes the truest measure of greatness is not how loudly the world cheers, but how gracefully someone lives once the cheers fade. Sammy Sosa is no longer chasing history, validation, or approval. He is living with his past rather than running from it. He is choosing presence over performance, peace over recognition, and meaning over noise. In a world that often confuses silence for disappearance, his life continues quietly, deliberately, and fully. And that perhaps is his quiet victory.